Welcome Retro Fiends, my name's Gray, this is Consoletronix, where today I turn back the clock to the 16-bit era to look at a console that in its day competed with both Nintendo and Sega, and more than held its own, until a disastrous US rebranding exercise renaming it to the TurboGrafx 16 and killing any hope of making the 16-bit market in the West a three-horse race. The machine in question is, of course, the NEC PC Engine, one of the coolest looking consoles and also, at the height of the great import scene, particularly in the UK and Europe, one of the most desired. But despite punching well above its weight first against the 8-bit Famicom and then even the Super Famicom, and keeping Sega third for many years, few Westerners talk or even care about this amazing little console or the impact it had. Well, today I put that right with my look at the best, worst and rarest PC Engine games. It wasn't good enough in the 8 and 16-bit eras to have the best games, the first CD attachment, or a handheld to play your games on the go. You also had to have a mascot. Nintendo had Mario, Sega had Sonic, and for a few years NEC had Bonk, or PC Genjin to give him his Japanese name, a caveman-themed selection of platformers and shooters that combined rock-solid gameplay with a level of humour rarely seen anywhere else. Bonk would jump ship to the SNES in the mid-90s as the 16-bit era was drawing to a close, but whatever the system, these are some of the best platformers you've probably never played. The port of the little-known Capcom arcade game from 1986, Sidearms, would be one of the very first games I would play when I finally got hold of my treasured PC Engine console in the late 1990s. Truthfully though, as a shoot-'em-up veteran, I wasn't expecting much, but after being humbled by the difficulty more times than I care to remember, Sidearms quickly earned my respect as a first-rate shooter on a system that's synonymous with the genre. Speaking of synonymous of the genre, let's jump the queue and look at one of the very best the PC Engine had to offer. This is Soldier Blade, one of the Star Soldier sequels crafted by Hudson Soft, a company that not only was the main software developer for the system, but also developer of the PC Engine itself. NEC was simply the sugar daddy, because it was Hudson who knew what gamers wanted. And while many would consider Final Soldier the better game, it's Soldier Blade that by far commands the higher price. Left to my own devices, I'd spend the entire video talking shoot-'em-ups. But they say variety is the spice of life, so let's get spicy with a cartoony look at another of Asia's hottest imports other than the PC Engine itself, Jackie Chan. For the life of me, I've never understood why movies like Drunken Master, Police Story or Armour of God never got games. But we did get this, Jackie Chan Action Kung Fu, also ported to the NES. It might look like Rumble in the Never Ending Story, but it's a cracker. Try it. Well, sadly we can't bask in the greatness of the PC Engine all day, because like a pendulum, we have to swing to the other end of the spectrum and look at some of the festering boils sticking to the console's posterior like barnacles. And here's one that needs lancing from the memory of most US TurboGrafx owners, as it was chosen as the pack-in game. It is Keith Courage in Alpha Zone. I knew very little about it if I'm honest, but the anime it was based on, Mashin Ayuden Wataru, could have an entire video dedicated to it, as it seems it was massive in Japan and served as the inspiration for One Piece. Very interesting, but doesn't change the fact that this game is utter shite. Jeez, and we thought Altered Beast was bad. Well, now we dip our toes into the rarer end of the waters. This is Darius Alpha, another entry in the long-running shoot-'em-up franchise. Except this one wasn't available in shops. You had to send away coupons from other Darius games to get it, meaning limited quantities and collectors shelling out eye-watering sums for pristine copies, while I sit here playing it on an emulator. Truly fools and their money are soon parted. As someone who followed the fortunes of the PC Engine as much as I could growing up, through magazines and word of mouth, the news wasn't always glowing. By 1993, the then 6-year-old system was thought to be well past its peak, with many UK gaming mags dropping coverage, and its flop in America seen merely as the last nail in its coffin. But in true Rocky underdog fashion, it still had one more round in it. The result was a knockout as Castlevania Rondo of Blood hit store shelves in Japan. And while Nintendo were understandably miffed to lose one of their top tier exclusives, it was Saga who came off worst, being awarded the wooden spoon for coming in last in the Japanese 16-bit wars. Similar to Sega, the PC Engine's RPG cupboard was pretty bare when compared to Nintendo, but that doesn't mean there aren't a few gems knocking about. And while Ys Books 1 and 2 didn't quite tickle my fancy, however a lesser known, also released in the West, Zelda ripoff very much did. Virtually forgotten now, Newtopia and its similarly styled sequel that you see here introduce little in the way of new ideas or innovation. But if you like RPGs and or Zelda, you have to give this plagiarizing pair a bash. Like Roy Chubby Brown, you're probably thinking, Alice? Who the fuck is Alice? Well, Fushugi no Yumi no Alice is a platformer based on Lewis Carroll's much-loved 1865 novel Alice in Wonderland. And while its cute visual style will no doubt put off some of the more hardcore crowd, this is a title with enough challenge and charm to keep you coming back for more. Another piss-poor PC Engine game that somehow, by fair means or foul, got picked up for release stateside. This is a truly awful game with zero redeeming features. Avoid like the plague. Considered by many to be one of the PC Engine's holy grail titles, this cutesy shooter may on the surface look no different to Cotton Fantastic Night Dreams, but under the pretty veneer it has some seriously impressive DNA, as the team who developed it would also bring to us Ogre Battle and Final Fantasy Tactics. Also released to the American market with slight changes, the Japanese original is by far the better version, but still, great game. You know, I can still remember back in the early 90s trying to convince many of my SNES and Mega Drive owning friends that the PC Engine was a serious rival to both Sega and Nintendo. I can't say my case was helped any when shockingly bad games like Deep Blue were what lined shelves in the West. That's right, this tripe was plucked from the heaving Japanese library of fantastic titles and released in the States. Who the hell was in charge of NEC's US operations? Stevie Wonder? Well now, with games like Deep Blue, China Warrior and Keith Courage, we have to ask ourselves a question. Were there any good games to accompany the PC Engine's US release? Well, here's one that's not just the best in the West, but I'd argue one of the finest on the PC Engine overall. Gunhead, although Stevie Wonder and co would retitle it to Blazing Lasers. Because of course they fucking would. An early entry in the Star Soldier franchise of standout shoot-em-ups, but thankfully one that's just about still on the right side of affordability. We return to the Lolita-littered landscape of cute and cuddly shoot-em-up sirens with Cotton Fantastic Night Dreams, an awesome arcade conversion, and the first in a franchise of notoriously difficult to obtain console and computer releases. Probably best known of the lot is Cotton Boomerang on the Saturn, or for all the gimmicky crockery sets that you could send off for. But make no mistake, the games themselves are fantastic. The original survival horror. Sort of. Namco's classic side-scrolling fusion of 80s horror movies mixed with faultless game design ripped the entrails out of the competition when released to arcades in 1989, becoming one of the year's biggest coin-op hits and cementing its place in gaming culture. But it would be the PC Engine that the only home console version would grace, before Sega wound up the beneficiaries with exclusive sequels after Namco's falling out with Nintendo. But the PC Engine original, which got a Western release, thankfully, is a must-own title. I feel like a kid in a candy store. There's so many great and good games I want to show off to all of you, but right now, we're gonna just take a step to the side and survey one of the stranger releases. This is Batman, released in Japan in time to coincide with the release of the classic Tim Burton movie. And while it's certainly not bad, far from it, it's just an overhead puzzler isn't the first thing that comes to mind when thinking of adaptations of the Dark Knight's rehabilitation on screen. So much so that for a while I thought I'd been Super Mario 2'd. But no, this was a Japanese exclusive. Again, it's good, it's very good, but why the Batman license? Lords of Thunder, the sequel to another PC Engine shooter of much renown, Gate of Thunder, is one of the high watermark moments, not just for shoot-em-ups on the PC Engine, but for shoot-em-ups full stop. Developed by former Technosoft employees who also brought to us the Thunder Force series. Much was expected of Lords of Thunder prior to release on the upgraded Super CD-ROM in 1993. And what can I say? We were not disappointed. Awesome graphics, a killer soundtrack, and gameplay so sharp you could take someone's eye out with it. An all-time classic. It wasn't just shoot-em-ups that drove me into the PC Engine's outstretched arms all those years ago, as I have been a frothing-at-the-mouth fanboy of one of Hudson Soft's most high-profile gaming dynasties for a while now, and that's Bomberman. Truth be told, I was first exposed to the series playing Super Bomberman 2 on the SNES at a friend's house, but to me, his spiritual home will always be the PC Engine, even if the Saturn version is my personal favourite, but shh! Don't tell anybody! Well, it's come to my notice that a lot of you are getting a little overexcited watching this parade of gaming beauties. Well, this one will put a damper on your ardour. This is Rarest and Saga 2, a swords and sandals side-scroller that puts you in the loincloth of a brainless barbarian on his quest to do something. Sorry I skipped the intro, and if you have any sense at all, you'll skip this one altogether. And now we take a look at how high fantasy hack and slash hijinks should be handled with Legendary Axe 2. Not quite in Golden Axe's league as far as fantasy themed action goes, but a worthy, if slightly darker sequel to a very enjoyable original. Good stuff.
Round 1, fight!
For a while, Nintendo had a monopoly over the entire console industry, but with more competitors like Saga and of course NEC popping up and refusing to be bullied, the exclusivity contracts Nintendo forced Japanese studios to sign were abandoned. Namco were the first, but were quickly followed by the likes of Konami and Capcom. That's how Castlevania and Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition wound up coming to Mega Drive and PC Engine. But NEC got there first and arguably did it better, with a spectacular conversion of Capcom's groundbreaking beat-em-up and running on a simple hue card to boot. Where would gaming be today without all the great and not quite so great ninja games of yesteryear? Games like Ninja Gaiden or Sega's Shinobi, which has an impressive PC Engine port by the way. But where does IREM's Ninja Spirit rank amongst them? Well, somewhere near the very top, if I have my way. This is one of those quintessential import-friendly action titles that mixes the weird Japanese symbolism with simple pick-up-and-play mechanics. Ports also exist for many 8 and 16-bit computer platforms, but if you want the best home port money can buy, this is it. We're 20 plus games deep, but for the penultimate game I still want to show off something unique, and that's a US exclusive title, so an original TurboGrafx 16 game and one based on what at the time was a high profile Disney cartoon. Surely that's all the ingredients required for an all action fun ride Oh, I'm sorry, I can't even finish that. Nah, this game is crap. I'd much rather play Pang. You remember Pang, don't you? The awesome arcade game that had some brilliant home ports on systems as diverse as the SNES to the Amiga. But the PC Engine version, known as Pumping World, is excellent. Darkwing Duck, on the other hand, had a very good 8-bit platformer on the NES, courtesy of Capcom. The TurboGrafx version was produced by Interactive Designs, and I had to look these fellas up, but they also would give us Home Alone 2 on the Mega Drive. Taito, on the other hand, would develop Liquid Kids. The PC Engine port has kept me glued to my monitor like a gibbering simpleton recently. I friggin' love it. But would I recommend Darkwing Duck on the TurboGrafx to fans of the show? Nope. Now give me a drum roll to segue into the last game I'm gonna look at. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Sapphire, or to give it its full moniker, Ginger Funky Densely Sapphire. And like the precious gemstone that it takes its name from, it is the jewel in the PC Engine's shoot-'em-up crown. Released pretty late in the console's lifespan in 1995, Sapphire is like Radiant Silvergun for NEC, as it's one of those shooters even non-shoot-'em-up fans want, and with good reason. It is brilliant. Few gaming platforms go out on a high, but with Sapphire, the PC Engine, which started out as a domestic competitor to the 8-bit Famicom in 1987, through the 16-bit era, would, with the 32-bit Saturn and PlayStation taking over the gaming landscape, still stand tall as the home of top quality software. And all these years later, its legacy, history and achievements would be recognised by those who snubbed it originally as one of the best consoles of all time. Well, what started out as a dozen or so games I was going to use to get a couple of cheap laughs has ballooned into a complete history of the system. But truthfully, I've only scratched the surface when it comes to all things PC Engine. So if you want to see more, tell me. My arm can be twisted. Or maybe you have another console or developer you'd like to see me sink my gaming teeth into. Let me know. Also, while there, what's your history with the PC Engine? Maybe you always wanted one, or perhaps you were one of the lucky few to get an import machine. Talk to me. Anyhow, I think this video has run its course. So until the next one, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.